You guys, welcome. It's a little after 9, so we probably should get started so that we have time to talk about this rather interesting, rather difficult, rather confusing, are you excited yet? Idea and topic. And it has, I titled it Perplexity of Paradox because it is perplexing to me. And so I wonder and I think about what does it mean, trying to get it a little deeper in my spirit. And so what in the world is this class about? Did you wonder? You may be here out of curiosity for day one. It's something that's been in my head and heart for some time. And so I think it's there because of the world that we currently live in. Because of this election season that started like 4 years ago. And so when I think about the world that we currently live in, it is an either-or world. It is a black or white world. It's a red or blue world. Republican or Democrat. American or anything else. Protestant or Catholic. Church of Christ or Methodist, Baptist, Presbyterian, Lutheran, you start the list. And here we go, either or. How in the world are we to live in such a cut and dried system? When we are called by our Lord to unity, to mercy, to respect, to kindness, we've got to figure out how, as followers of Christ, we navigate this world. Well, that's what led me to pursue this topic. What does it mean? How does the reality of paradox affect my thinking, my behaviors, or does it? That's the question. It's not a simple process, and it's one that in these 5 weeks, or 4 weeks, how many do we have? We have 4, right? 4. These 4 weeks, I got scared for a minute, and then you got scared. For these 4 weeks, it's likely to raise more questions than provide answers. So if you're okay with that, and ready for that kind of exploration, welcome. Okay, there's no Exodus yet. We'll wait a little while for that. There is a research writer for the Atlantic Monthly magazine that wrote this line, awesomeness is everything. His name's Matthew Hudson. Definition of awe, he describes it like this: the experience of encountering something so vast in size or skill or beauty or intensity, something so vast that we struggle to comprehend it, and we may even adjust our world to accommodate it. All right, awe. The sense of awe. To feel awe is to confirm a beautiful, wild universe, a world that we neither made nor have any control over. We can't always explain it. We accept the idea of awesomeness, but we would love to tame it a little bit. We want to tame it down and put it in a box that we make. Okay? Well, first of all, the first thing I want us to do is to go back and do some historical plank laying, okay? Some historical thoughts about how we got where we are. Okay, first of all, early history. Early history, when the earth was thought to be flat. All right, you're going to go back that far. The world was thought to be enchanted, inhabited and acted on by invisible spiritual forces. And humans were vulnerable to those forces. Forces that were connected to earth and sky, connected to wind, and all of these things and many more were assigned deity. They were called God, a God. Many were named and worshipped. Spring, harvest time, positions of the moon, season changes, etc. Well, then came the Renaissance and the humanism that appeared during the Renaissance period. The scientific revolution, even the Reformation, comes in after this early period. And the idea that the world itself could show us something of the transcendent, that idea was cut out. The idea that the world itself could show us something about God, that was cut out. Mystery was expelled from the universe. And we were left with a visible, measurable, and scientifically verifiable world, ready to be dissected, splayed out, and explained. It was all about clarity and control. We are the masters of our own understanding. Can you feel it? Some of you maybe are old enough, like me, to go back to high school and remember, do you remember the poem Invictus? That poem that said, by William Ernest Henley, that said, it ends with, I am the master of my fate and the captain of my soul. And we grabbed it. We grabbed it. We like that. We're post-Renaissance, post-scientific revolution. We like that idea. I'm the master of my fate. There is an author, Jen Michael, who writes this: the great modern lie is one of infinite human autonomy and control. Okay, do you hear it? The biggest human lie right now is that of our own autonomy and our own control. That's the God of rationalism. The first philosopher that was given the title of a rationalist in history was Pythagoras. 6th century BC. You remember the Pythagorean theorem? We're talking about going to school. Do you remember that? You know I'm a retired math teacher. And my favorite subject to teach in all of the math curriculum was geometry. I loved geometry. I thought I loved it when I thought about it because of the figures, the drawing of the figures, the relationship among the figures, the way they interact with each other, the way they relate to each other. I thought it had to do with visual. You taught geometry too, right? I thought it had to do with the relationship between figures and all that. But you know, I've changed my mind. I think now, I love teaching geometry because here is a statement, now prove it. That's what you train kids to do. I don't think they do anymore, do they? And it's a loss. It's a loss because it's a logical progression. You start here, or you start here at the beginning point, and you start making statements, no jumps of faith. Man, it's got to be concrete stuff. And you go down until you get to your statement, and bingo, you proved it. I think that's why I liked geometry. Plus the fact that in math, You guys, the answers were all in the back of the book, which was awesome. No other subject had that advantage of having all your answers in the back of the book.
Only the odd numbers.
But the teacher's edition, we had them all. Oh, well, let's talk a minute.
And when the students find the teacher's
Yes.
grade book,
Yes.
and then you discover on the test that universal catch-all answers will vary. That was always.
Oh, my.
always
So,
major.
anyway, prove it. Statements are provable. And if they're not provable, they're not true. Right? There's geometry. Now, let's talk a minute about what rationalism is when we use the word rationalism. And what we mean when we recognize that we have been trained as rationalists since little bitty. It's in us, you guys. It's in our DNA almost. This business of rational thought. Rationalism. Definition. In Western philosophy, it is the view that regards reason as the chief source and test of knowledge. Right? Reason.
We can rationalize anything.
That's the problem, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so this idea of rationalism, reason is the chief source. It holds the idea that reality itself is inherently logical in structure. The rationalist asserts and claims that a class of truths exist that the intellect can grasp directly. Right? You can get that. You're a rationalist. You get that idea. There are, according to rationalists, this quote, certain rational principles, especially in logic and mathematics, even in ethics and metaphysics, that are so fundamental that to deny them is to fall into contradiction. All right, stay with me. The rationalist's confidence in reason and proof tends, therefore, to distract their respect for any other way of knowing. Does that make sense? The rationalist's focus on reason says there's no other way to learn. There's no other way to know. In ethics, rationalism holds the position that reason, rather than feeling, rather than custom, rather than authority, is the ultimate court of appeal in judging what's good and bad, what's right and wrong. Well, then we go and hear someone like Augustine who says this. We've heard the fact. Now, what about the mystery? Let us seek the mystery. So, where does the reality of paradox fit? How can two seemingly contradictory principles be simultaneously true? Right? That doesn't fit our rationalism. It's perplexing, no? It's perplexing and confusing. And so that's where we stumble around. Is there any place in our thinking, in our world, for both and rather than either or? Is there a place for contradictory things to exist? A writer by the name of William Johnston wrote this: faith is the breakthrough into that deep realm of the soul which accepts paradox with humility. Hear it again. Faith is the breakthrough into that deep realm of the soul which accepts paradox with humility, because you can't always explain it. Well, let's go here. Let's do a definition of paradox first. All right, what are we talking about? A statement that seems self-contradictory, okay? Or even absurd, but in reality expresses a possible truth. All right, that's one definition. Or second definition, any person, thing, situation, or principle displaying an apparently contradictory nature. Okay, that's paradox, by definition. It's a form of expression that seems to be either self-contradictory or absurd, but at another level expresses fundamental truth. It's often employed to get hearers to think at a deeper and more critical level. All right, hear that sentence. It is often employed to get hearers to think at a deeper and more critical level. Now, it's closely related sometimes to hyperbole or an exaggerated statement, except that for the paradox, there is an apparent element of contradiction which grabs attention and demands consideration. All right? So that's kind of definition of paradox. Now, I want you to hear the writer Parker Palmer. He says the promise of paradox is the promise that apparent opposites, like order and disorder, can cohere in our lives. The promise that when we replace either or with both and, our lives will become larger and more filled with light. I mean, you have to sit with that for a minute. He goes on to write, it's the promise at the heart of every wisdom tradition I know anything about, not the least of which is Christianity. How else, he writes, can I make any sense of the statement, if you seek your life, you'll lose it? Or, the first shall be last, and the last shall be first. What? So, this trying to define paradox then moves us, to me it's a logical projection, it may not be, but from this definition it moves me into talking about the idea of mystery. Does mystery fit biblical theology? Can it be a part of that? Or is it a wavering weakness in faith or a lack of surety? This business of mystery, when telling a story, the parable of the sower, you know that story, Jesus told it. The disciples asked Jesus, what does this mean? They didn't get it. And he answers their question with this, talking about secrets of the kingdom. Now, other translations use the word mystery. He's talking about mysteries of the kingdom. In the New Testament, the word translated mystery is used 27 times. That's not insignificant. 27 times the idea and thought of mystery is placed in the New Testament. It's not a foreign concept of faith. In fact, I would say it's part of it. It's part of it. Let's get a definition. Mystery. The Greek word, mysterion. That's the Greek. The root of mysterion is M-U-O, which means, I love this, shut the mouth. Isn't that fabulous? Have you ever been somewhere where you thought, shut your mouth? Who's been to Bouchard Gardens in British Columbia, Canada? Anybody? You gotta go, you guys. Put it on your bucket list. It is one of the most stunning places. Robert and Jenny Bouchard, he was an industrialist at the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century. And they moved to this island off of British Columbia, west, to put a cement plant on a limestone-rich land. Okay, you know what happens when that happens? The land gets absolutely raped and devastated. And so it started in 1904, it's a while back. In 1912, the limestone deposits were gone. Caverns in the land, what had been done to the land was awful. Bouchard's wife, Jenny, had this vision of reclaiming that land and creating something of beauty. It was the kind of place, one of my daughters lived in Seattle for a while, so on one visit we took a boat up and went to Bouchard Gardens. There was all these different kinds of gardens. Every corner I turned, I found myself thinking, Gail, shut your mouth. Because, when you feel like you're faced with something there's a tendency to, that's what this word means. Shut your mouth. Shut your mouth. Well, definitions, it can be a hidden thing, a secret, a mystery. Generally, mysteries or religious secrets that are confided only to the initiated. There's that piece. Not obvious to the understanding. In rabbinic writings, mystery denotes the mystic or the hidden sense of a saying or an image or a form maybe that was seen in a vision or a dream. Okay, so that's this sense of mystery. If we go to the English dictionary, you get anything that's kept secret or remains unexplained or unknown. That's a mystery. That's a little easier for us to get hold of. So this business of anything that remains unexplained can be described as mystery. Okay. I've read several books about paradox as I've been thinking about this and plugging along with it. I'm going to share titles and subtitles, okay? The descriptor lines under the titles. Listen to this, this pile of stuff. There's a book, The Promise of Paradox. Subtitle, A Celebration of Contradictions in the Christian Life. That's a good one. Surprised by Paradox. Subline, The Promise of and in an either-or world. Here's another one, Vibrant Paradoxes. Subtitle, The Both and of Catholicism. Here's another one, The Way of Paradox. Spiritual Life as Taught by Meister Eckhart. The Order-Disorder Paradox. Subline, Understanding the Hidden Side of Change in Self and Society. Right? And it goes on and on and on. It's amazing. This is not an unthought through subject. I just hadn't thought through it before. So, why are we spending our time in Bible study together on a subject as this? And that is a very, very valid question. My answer would be because Jesus used it a lot. He used paradox. I go back. Did you hear that definition back before? When we said often it was used to get hearers to think at a deeper and more critical level. Perhaps that's why he reverted to paradox and parable all the time. That was his path. That was his journey. And so it is worthy of our attention and our time. Today, in our first class, in addition to this way too long introduction and definitions and explanations, we're going to look a bit in just a few minutes at some of the use of paradox that Jesus himself used. And think about them. Now, you've studied a bunch of these passages. They're not new stuff. And so you'll have a sense of it already. So we're going to explore. And then next week, second week, we're going to look at the paradox of the incarnation. The very incarnation is a paradox. And then third week, we're going to look at the paradox of kingdom. And the fourth week, the paradox of grace. Because in reality, you guys, we are a part of a both and faith. And I think we need to examine it more carefully.
Gail,
Yeah.
Can I add one more paradox?
Yes.
The Bible itself, from beginning to end.
So the word.
The most trivial sin imaginable. Don't eat that fruit. separated all mankind from God. And the most profoundly evil sin imaginable, the torture, murder, and humiliation of God Almighty come to earth as a man, redeems us. If you can figure that out, it just...
You can't figure it out. Thank you for that. Yeah, that's a shut your mouth, right? You can't figure it out. And here's what we face, you and I, as rationalists in Western America. It's okay to not be able to figure it out. And inside us, we don't think it's okay. It won't fit a geometry proof, will it? You've got black on one side, and you've got white on the other side. Paradox does not mean that you weaken both until you get some kind of boring color of gray. That's not what paradox means. Paradox means you've got black, you've got white, both are true. Both are strong. And we don't weaken them. They both exist. The Nobel Prize winning physicist, Niels Bohr, says this: the opposite of a correct statement is a false statement. But the opposite of a profound truth is often, or maybe, another profound truth. Both things exist. And there is the heart of paradox. All right? Now, where I want us to shift for a few minutes is to look at some of the things Jesus said, and some of the things Paul said, actually, and get a sense of what it means to talk in paradox, and then for you and I to live in paradox. Okay? First of all, go to Matthew 10:34. He who finds his life will lose it. He who loses his life for my sake will find it. Paradox, right? On surface, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, you've been in enough Bible studies. I know a whole bunch of you. You've been in, so we've talked about this. Where do you settle with it? Can you see the paradox in it? Any comment at all? It's kind of a let's sit with it for a minute. I get that.
Sometimes you just have to accept the paradox without understanding it. Personally, I hate mayonnaise and I hate ketchup and I hate sweet pickle relish, but I love Thousand Island dressing, so go figure. Which is ketchup and mayonnaise and Thousand Island dressing.
Okay, the rationalist in me says that's weird.
Yeah. You're not the first people I know to suggest that.
Okay, that sense of we sit with it. To find your life, you must lose it. Words of Jesus. Do you want to find your life? I think most of us would say yes.
Gail,
Yeah, Kathy.
Matthews 10:39. Instead of 34.
Oh, I wrote it wrong.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I'm learning to keep my mouth short.
However, that was a good catch. That was a good catch, Kathy. Thank you. It's 39. This is supposed to be. If I get a black Sharpie, can I just do that? It will be okay? I might get in trouble for that.
Yeah.
Okay, 39. Who do you think, what do you think of? Yeah.
I mean, if I understood your question, you're asking about how we deal with it. So I don't want to try to resolve the paradox, but how we have tried in the past.
How we try to, yes.
I think in logic, sometimes the law of non-contradiction is something like something can't be both A and not A in the same time in the same place.
Yes.
I think we sometimes try to resolve this one with time. So like if we seek our life now, maybe
Yes.
physical life, what's best for us in the moment, we lose eternal life. And so we tend to, I think, contradict now and later.
Put it in now and later. That's going to fit a lot, actually, of the ones we're going to look at. Yeah, what do you think?
Maybe it's, and you can also, it's definitional. The definition of life
Okay.
is a way to think
okay? As we go deeper, as if a paradox is used for the hearer to think more deeply, that's what is happening when we do that, okay? That's what's happening. Well, I think about, of Socrates. One of the Greek philosophers wrote of Socrates this, that dying, he was saved because he did not flee. Okay? Socrates, philosopher, credited with the founder of Western philosophy, one of the first moral philosophers. He was such a figure. He offered text, but he was never known until he died. And then his students, Plato, his students arose with his principles. He died with poisoning, hemlock, I think was what it was, so the tradition says, I don't know. But that idea that until death there was no real life beyond just himself. Okay. Warren Wiersbe, a Bible scholar, writes this. This presents us with only two alternatives: spare your life or sacrifice your life. Those are your two choices here. There's no middle ground. If we protect our own interest, we will be losers. If we die to self and live for his interest, we will be winners. Since spiritual conflict is inevitable in this world, why not die to self and let Christ win the battle for us and in us? After all, the real war is inside. Selfishness versus sacrifice. It just makes you think. And now what does that look like? You think about your life. What does that look like in your life? I can't give you anything there. I've got to do it for me. That's hard enough, and I know me really well, I think. And so this is something that you have to examine for yourself. Let's look at another one. Kathy, check me. John 3 and 4.
I want to say that 10:34
Yeah,
is another paradox.
read it.
It says, think not that I come to send peace on earth. I came not to send peace, but sword.
Bring a sword. Yeah. Okay, John 3 and 4. I tell you the truth, no one can see the kingdom of God unless he's born again. That's a stupid statement, right? Nicodemus thought so. Because he didn't think it was stupid, but when Jesus said this to him, he says, what? How in the world? I'm an old man, he said. I'm going to go back in my mom? And isn't that what the literalist in us says? We say that, and so we have to deal with what's Jesus doing in this paradox to be born again, or to be, to see the kingdom. You have to start over, I think is what he's saying maybe. You've got to be born again, start fresh. All right, that's going to make you think, right? It's going to make you struggle with, what's he talking about? What's he talking about? Let's look at another one. Mark 10:15. It's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. Again, absurdity. I've read, David, tell me if you've read that. I have read, I can't remember which commentary, that there's a gate in Jerusalem around the city that is very small and that it's called the Eye of the Needle Gate. Is that true?
I've heard that too. I don't know if that's true.
I don't know if it's true.
I think we like to talk about it because it lessens the paradox a little bit.
I think it does. I think it's a way to explain why this absurd statement was made. Well, maybe not. Yeah.
We call that a rationalization.
Yes, we would. We would, because we can't sit with the difficulty of paradox. And so we do call it rationalization. And we say, oh yes, well what he's referring to is there's a small gate in the wall around Jerusalem that you have to, a camel would have to be forced down on their knees and somehow get through. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I hated him, but I was
Oh,
a mad
so
teacher. So you figure that out. As a
Let's do it
parent-
again.
But I wanted to say something that there's a word in the King James Version, given, and Jesus used that term to help his disciples that it is given to you to understand and to know, and not to others. I mean, sometimes we try to look for it, and we can't find it. We can't even find the rationality. We even put formulas together and hope that we can. And one other thing, I had an instructor, trigonometry, basic 202, 5, 6, whatever it is, that top thing was. He would argue the first 5 minutes before class on a problem on the board. He would try to figure it out, but he would argue with himself loudly. And then his final conclusion was, there is no answer. Let's go to class.
That's right. If I don't get it,
Yeah.
there's no answer. We've done that religiously, haven't we? I'm afraid we have. Well, this one is so interesting because, take it at face value, a camel through the eye of the needle, that is absurdity beyond anything. That's absurdity.
Gail, I feel like they're all linked into somewhat of the idea of being able to control your life. You know, how rich people that feel they are very much in control. And that might be, I feel like that might be something like that he's alluding, I'm not trying to like answer, but for me,
No.
when you were talking about the other paradoxes, I felt like it was all about control for me personally. It was like, when I was baptized, I was trying to give up control. And I continually, daily, try to give up control and let
Every morning,
Jesus,
yes.
and that's kind of where I find life, like, okay, I'm not in control here, I'm gonna let, surrender that, but at a time, I was all about controlling what my life was about, because I thought I was finding my life,
Mm-hmm.
and in my control,
Yeah.
I lost it, I did it, it was torture, and then finally I said, okay, you're in control.
Yes. Well, that's that whole definition of rationalism and our Western thought. And it is control. When did Jesus say this? Do you remember? Who did he say it to? Does anybody have that in their head?
The rich man who said.
The rich man who came and said, what must I do? What must I do? That sounds honest, doesn't it? And I think maybe in his spirit it was honest. What must I do? And Jesus looked at him and he loved him. This was a good guy. This was a good man. And he looked at him and he loved him and he said, okay, just one thing. Sell all your stuff. And the man was crushed because he couldn't do it. And he went away. Walked away from light, from enlightenment, because he couldn't handle the cost. We talk about sacrifice. And the disciples say, what? And Jesus tells them this. I don't care what your bank account says. You know how much we fight trusting what's in it. However much you've got or however little you've got,